when we last spoke to him, free agency was approaching. Now free agency done, and the draft is done. And Rick Spielman is done with the bulk of his work, at least for now. But it's on to 2022, and it's Rick Spielman. Rick, welcome back. How are you, pal?
Well, good. Thanks for having me on today.
What do you do when the draft is over? What's your workday become?
Well, it's right now I've got finished some coaches' contracts. I got the whole football operations staff from a contract finishing their contracts. I got, doing some things on the business side, overseeing some guys that we have to bring in right now for our rookie mini camp. So there's just 100 things that are going on still, and it never seems to really end. You just shift your focus from the draft and free agency. Now you shift it over to more administrative things that you have to get done.
Of course, the rookie minicamp coming up in a couple of weeks. It's the first time you have players back in the building. I saw somewhere that the teams are limited to 5 tryout players, but it's still a healthy complement of players who will be there for a few days on the field practicing, right?
Yeah, it depends by each team on how many college free agents, how many draft picks. Also, if there's some teams some players from your current roster that are still eligible to participate in this, that varies from team to team as well. I think we won't, in the past, we've always had about 60 guys out there because we had maybe 40 of them, 30 of them as open tryouts. And that's how we would find an Adam Thielen or a CJ Ham or Marcus Sherrills types. We found Chad Beebe out of one of those camps. Unfortunately, this year we can't do it. But the fortunate part is at least our coaches can get on the grass with these guys, start teaching them technique, especially with all the draft picks coming in and the college free agents coming in, where last year all we did was Zoom with them. And, our rookies didn't even know where the facility was till the first day they showed up at training camp. So hopefully this will help expedite their process and get our coaches start working with these guys.
I think back to how crazy last year was, and the Vikings, one of the teams that had very few, if any, fans at any point during the season, really took away that great home field advantage. What's the current anticipation of how many fans you think you'll have when September rolls around?
Well, we'll just wait. That's not our decision. It'll be, with Andrew Miller, our COO, working with the government. I know the Twins and the Wild are letting a certain amount of fans in right now. So we'll see what happens as it goes. I know the Timberwolves have some people down there, but hopefully it'll continue as people get vaccinated and this COVID comes under control a little bit more, that we'll be able to have close to hopefully full capacity, or at least have fans in there. And the other thing I think is important is having fans here at training camp, because that gets everybody's juices flowing, from the players, from the coaches, and even the fans being able to participate and come out and watch training camp. But that's to be determined.
Until then, the draft gets a lot of fans' juices flowing. And let's pivot to that. And let me start with, just very basically, I see grades starting to pop up in the media. Do you give a grade to your own draft? And if so, what grade would you give this year's?
I'm not smart enough to put a grade on these guys. I know how we feel about them, but it's like until we get out there and see them, and there's guys that surprise you that how quickly they're going to make an impact on this roster. Other guys, it may take some time to develop, but you don't know that until we actually get going. And I never put a grade as the kind of golden rule out there to see where they are 3 years from now. Guys can have some ups and downs for the first couple of years, and all of a sudden something sticks and they play well. But I just, like I said, I'm not smart enough as some of those draft pundits out there, I guess would be the term, like yourself, that can put grades on
me. Hey, Rick, I give the same grades every year. Everybody gets an incomplete for the reasons you just explained. Because we don't know. And it would be foolish to know. Do you think that we're getting any closer to the point where you can tell? You still can't. All the time, all the money, all the analytics, everything you put into it, you still don't know until you put the guy out on the field with other NFL caliber players, right?
Right. And some of these guys, you haven't seen in over a year play competitive football. Some of the guys that had opted out, some of the guys we were able to see a little bit while they got a chance to practice down at the Senior Bowl. But some of these guys, the only thing we had to go off of was what they did at their pro day. And that's basically doing drills that are in the non-competitive situations. And that's why what Jim Nagy was able to pull off down there at the Senior Bowl and to see these guys in that atmosphere and setting was probably the last realistic look that we got at the guys that were at the Senior Bowl as far as what they're going to be potentially as football players.
Take me through how the mechanics go when you're on the clock at 14 and the Jets trade up and you trade down. Did you know before the draft even began that it was a possibility the Jets were going to give you a phone call and make you an offer in that 10-minute window?
No, usually where we were picking, and hopefully we're not picking that high again, because everybody's going to see how the board's falling and what players are potentially going to be there or not be there. It's hard to predict after the first two picks who else is going to be there. So most of the time, in my experience, and almost all the time, it's when you're on the clock is when you're getting the calls, or maybe a pick or two before. So there's a lot of communication going on. At one point, we had 3 teams on the phone at the same time, and everybody's throwing out different ideas and different scenarios. We have an automated system where I can see everything going on and whether, hey, let's just stick and take the player, or this trade's better than this trade. And that can be, I know when we had that scenario, this draft, there was 2 minutes left on the clock that a particular team was trying to trade up with us.
Yeah, and even though you weren't there when it happened, I'm sure that's the last thing that the Vikings want to be attached to is the clock running out again, even though it was 18 years ago when it occurred.
And it ended up being a pretty good player. So I would say,
True.
But no, you want to be prepared, and you just have to make a lot of split-second decisions and just say, tell them, no, we're just going to take our player, or, yeah, let's do that trade. Last year we were very active trading, accumulated, I think, up 15 picks. This year, we only traded once the whole time in the first round. And then we were able to accumulate so many picks in those middle rounds, the 3rd and 4th round, that we felt there were a lot of good players there that we wanted to take that could come in and help our ball club. Didn't feel the draft was as deep in the later rounds and college free agency. So that's why we kind of stuck to, let's get our best players and the best players available in that middle round. Last year, there were a lot more players available, and we actually accumulated all those 7th round picks. And my philosophy there, whether right or wrong, was that's going to be our college free agency, because I don't know how this virtual signing players after the draft virtually is going to work. So the strategic thinking that goes in every year depends on the depth of the board, the amount of players on the board, and is how you kind of formulate what you're going to do.
What do you use to determine that you're getting the right value when you go from 14 to 23? I mean, the Bears had to give up next year's first rounder to go from 20 to 11. And I know it's a different dynamic, but still, how do you get it just right? That it's fair for you and it's fair for the Jets, and we're going to go ahead and pull the trigger and call this a trade that balances out with you picking up 2 threes, then picking up a 4th rounder, and you flip-flopping 14 and 23?
A lot of it is everybody has their trade charts, but we try to really look at historical value of trades. Rob Brzezinski and our analytics team do a great job on the value and what historically has been given for that pick. The other thing we've really honed in on is looking at different buckets. So if you do trade, and you trade out of, let's say, pick 1 through 7 is the same exact player when they become pros, and pick number 16 through 40 is the exact same success rate when they become pros. So we kind of work in buckets as we do all of our trading as we go through the draft, and not trying to trade down too far into a separate bucket. So there's a lot of different things that's really evolved since, the first trade chart had come out and the point system would come out. And so we're doing a lot of things based on historical value and how our analytics have come up with the buckets that we want to be in.
I know that a lot of cards get held close to the vest before, during, and after the draft, but did you get at 23 and Christian Darrisaw, the guy you would have taken at 14 if you hadn't done a trade?
I will say we were very excited to get Christian Darrisaw.
And all that implies or doesn't imply. Let me fast forward to your next pick in round 3, because you didn't have a second rounder as a result of the Yannick Ngakoue trade, but you picked up a third rounder when you traded Yannick Ngakoue to the Ravens. Kellen Mond. First, I have a trivia question for you.
Okay.
The Vikings have drafted 26 quarterbacks since the team launched in 1961. When is the last time the Vikings used a third-round draft pick on a quarterback?
Not during my time. Not during the last 16 years. I know that for a fact.
Kellen Mond is the first third-round Vikings quarterback since the first Vikings draft, when Fran Tarkenton was a third-round pick out of Georgia. So big shoes already for Kellen Mond to fill. The first third-rounder since then. What attracted
I'm writing that down right now. So I learned something from Mike Florio today.
That's the first time that's ever happened. What attracted you to Kellen Mond?
You know, we spent a lot of time on the quarterbacks this year, and the one thing that Kellen really stuck out to us on his progression from his rookie year to what he did his second year, and then this year, I know, you know, seeing him perform in that Florida game, you know, off the tape, and how he won a close game. Then he goes down and wins a big game in the bowl game against North Carolina, who had a lot of great players on that roster who got drafted this past weekend. And then you go down to the Senior Bowl, and it's the first chance we get to see him live and see how he kept ascending through this process and how well he played down at the Senior Bowl. We sent our coaches down to his pro day. Andrew Janocko, our quarterback coach, really liked his workout. In fact, I spent Thursday night and Friday watching his hour Zoom call again with our coaches and going through getting to know the kid, because a lot of times this year for me personally, I didn't get to talk to a lot of these kids because the month of March I was traveling so much trying to get to as many pro days. But our coaches and our scouts and working together, I think we did over 200 Zoom calls this year, and we recorded them all. So I can go back when I got off the road or this time or when I had time in the evening to sit there and listen to these Zoom calls to get to know these kids, you know, because I never had an interaction with him except when I was down at the Senior Bowl. But his interview was very impressive, and our coaches think there are things that he needs to get corrected, but they're all correctable with coaching. And he has some really natural athletic skills he can throw on the run, and he's a great scheme fit here for what we're trying to do.
When you say you did a lot of work on the quarterbacks this year, are you talking about the cut, that second cut beyond the top 5, or are you talking about all of them up to and including the guys taken at the very top of the draft?
Well, I can tell you it's not just quarterbacks. We do that with every position. So, because you never know what happens in the draft. So we try to put just as much time on the top of the board as we do in the later rounds. And the processes that we put in place, the amount of meetings, when the coaches get involved and doing 2 different coaching meetings with them, you know, so I'm not going to say we put a lot of time in every year, not only on quarterbacks, but we've done that every year since I've been here. I think it's important that you have to do your work and your homework because you never know what's going to happen. And plus, you don't know what's going to happen down the road. So if there's a trade or you sign a guy or a guy gets cut, you already have all that information built into your system because you did the work when they were coming out of college.
I watched your press conference on Saturday after the Mond selection, Friday night rather, and you said that you had him right up there among the top quarterbacks. Where did he rank? Chris Sims was one of the few that had him at number 4 ahead of Justin Fields and Trey Lance. Where did he fall on your ranking of the quarterbacks in this draft?
Well, I'm sorry I didn't invite you, Mike, to see our draft board and the rankings at the position, but we felt, you know, that where we got him, that we were very excited to get him.
Actually, I was just going to show up. I was just going to show up, knock on the door, and say, you know, let me in.
As long as you passed your COVID test and Mesa test and you were vaccinated, you could have had potential access.
Fully and completely vaccinated, baby, just like you. I saw your sticker on your lapel this weekend. The Mond pick at round 3. You know, when you take a quarterback round 1, sends a message. Round 2 sends a message. Round 7, different message. Round 3, as a Vikings fan who would be looking at this, trying to process, what does this mean? What does it mean? What would be your message to the average Vikings fan about what they should take from the fact that this third-round pick was devoted on a quarterback that the team and the organization think highly of?
One, we're following our board, so he was the best player available at that time on our draft board, regardless of position. Two, I know we wanted Kirk's our quarterback, and we wanted to create competition with all our young quarterbacks, with Nate Stanley, with Jake Browning, and now with Kellen Mond, to have those guys all come in and compete and just see where it takes us.
Did you consider trading up into round 2 to get Mond?
I'm not going to say what we considered. It might have been Mond, it might have been 16 other players that we could consider trading up. You're always, I just tell you, we've been very, from a philosophical standpoint, we're always very proactive on trying to move up and down that draft board, regardless of who the player is.
I spoke to Kirk Cousins Super Bowl week, and he told me he wants to retire as a member of the Vikings, but he also made it clear that he feels no compulsion to extend a contract that runs through 2022, has a huge cap number next year, and as a practical matter, because he was tagged twice by Washington, he can't be franchise tagged in 2023. So he's got a lot of leverage there. How much of this choice was aimed at protecting yourself against the possibility that Cousins has 2 really strong years and commands top dollar and walks away in free agency?
You know, you're always kind of looking at your roster and where it may be 2 or 3 years down the road, but that's hard to predict as much as you try to roster plan. So, you know, every rookie that we draft, we're hoping that regardless of position that they're going to be here, and whatever role they end up carving out, they end up helping the Minnesota Vikings, whether it be in a backup role, starter role, special teams role. So we're just trying to put the best 53 players together and trying to bring in young competition every year to compete with the guys that are currently on our roster. And you're always looking down the road, but you don't know that until you get everything in the building and start working with these guys. And let's just see where we're at down the road.
You said the other night that you didn't contact Kirk Cousins before the pick was made, that that's not something that you ordinarily would do. Have you spoken to him since the pick was made of Kellen Mond?
Oh, yeah. No, I spoke to him Saturday morning, and talked to his agent and just let him know that we want to make sure we have competition behind him, that there's no doubt Kirk's our quarterback going forward, and that, we want to create competition to see who's going to be the backup. And no, Kirk was great. He understands, and he knows he's our guy. His agent knows he's our guy. So right now we're just focusing on getting ready for this season coming up.
Give me a quick assessment of where you think the defensive line is post-draft, given that last year, especially with Danielle Hunter injured, it seemed to fall off. Yannick Ngakoue didn't work out. You retraded him, as I mentioned earlier. Where's the pass rush and the defensive line right now?
We think we were able to definitely upgrade our defensive line. We were pretty proactive in free agency, signing Stephen Weatherly back, but knowing the depth of probably this defensive tackle market, that's why the Tomlinson signing was so important for us, and to get a Michael Pierce back, to get some of these young pass rushers along with DJ Wanham, who we think has tremendous upside, and to add a Robinson and a Patrick Jones. We think there's going to be great competition there, and it's definitely going to help our pass rush. And when you can improve your pass rush, it sure does help the back end with the secondary.
Where do things stand right now with Danielle Hunter? Missed all last year after neck surgery. Every once in a while, there's a flare-up as it relates to his contract. What's your expectation for him in 2021?
I think he's going to have an excellent, outstanding year for us. So looking forward to getting him back on the field along with all the other guys that we weren't able to play with last year. And I think getting all that gang back together, along with the new additions in free agency and the picks that we had in the draft, very excited to see where this team is headed.
Last one for you, and I hate to say that because usually that means there's another one after that. But as it relates to the Aaron Rodgers situation in Green Bay, I'm curious from your perspective, when something like this goes down between a player and a team, whether it's him and the Packers, Deshaun Watson and the Texans, how closely do you pay attention to how it gets handled, how the players involved, the agents involved handle it, just for your own edification? if and when you find yourself in a similar predicament, you study how those teams handle it, because that may or may not influence you on how to handle a situation like that.
Well, the first site I go to is Pro Football Talk.
And read everything we say about it and then do the opposite.
No, I really, you always read things and stuff like that. But Aaron Rodgers is maybe the best quarterback that ever played this game. And I'm never going to talk about anyone else's players. One, I'm not allowed to. It's illegal. But you just always look at different situations. The most important thing is evaluating us and our decisions. And if we do make mistakes, how do we correct them, or what will we do differently? And if something works out great, what do we do well so we continue to do that? So my main focus is here on the Minnesota Vikings.
I remember last year they asked Coach Mike Zimmer about the Packers trading up to get Jordan Love, and he said, I hope they trade Aaron Rodgers. I think that's what they should do. I have a feeling Zimmer would say the same thing right now if he were to talk about it. Rick, it's great as always talking to you. Congratulations on getting through another draft, and all the best as you get the guys ready for the 2021 season, which as always will be here before we know it.
I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to come on with you, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.